Like Jennifer said, I graduated in 2007, and since then I've been kind of feeling out the postgraduate lifestyle. A few significant life events have happened since then. I'm still an intern at Albert Kahn Associates, and I'm about hopefully 14 months away from actually becoming a real live architect. I've still got to take my architectural registration exams, but I can't do that until I actually graduate with my master's degree. Significant life event. In 2009, I actually went out and bought a house. So as someone who recently graduated, getting into the housing market was something that was completely foreign to me. I really didn't know what I was doing, but it was exciting and scary at the same time. I also recently got married too, so that's another experience you have postgraduate for most of us. So again, it's one of those things that kind of builds on my postgraduate experience. The fun part about Jennifer asking me to do this is it gave me a chance to reflect on what life is like now that I'm making the transition from happy-go-lucky student to a real-life professional. For me, it was a pretty humbling experience, especially given the time that I was graduating. I actually started my job in January 2008, and if you guys remember, 2008 got kind of hairy for a lot of people. After 4.5 years of architecture studios, a reasonable amount of partying, and a variety of extracurricular experiences, the question starting to stare me in the face was, what now? What's the next step? You go through school and you've got this rubric or matrix that tells you how to get through it. How am I going to finish my degree? It tells you you got to take these steps. Well, there's no roadmap once you get out into the real world, and that's kind of the part that takes some figuring out. So I guess one of the questions I have is, what have you guys done to prepare yourself? And it's a rhetorical question, so don't worry. How do you start your life after graduation? For those of you having a panic attack because you just realized you're 2 months from graduation, stop worrying. It's okay. To be fair, graduating is not as scary as it may seem, even if you have no prospects, no goals set. It's good if you have those, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. You still have time. From my experience, as long as you're willing to work hard for it and are willing to set a few smart goals and have realistic expectations of what to expect moving forward, you're going to be okay. And for the most part, a lot of you guys have a pretty good idea of how things are going to go down. For today, there's a few things I wanted to focus on, but one thing I will say before I really get into it is if you guys have questions at any point, please ask. I really don't want to stand up here and be lecturing the whole time. It's no fun for me. It's no fun for you. I'd rather kind of start a dialogue and start to figure out what you guys are really interested in. What do you guys want to know? You guys are the ones that are about to graduate and probably have more questions. That's why you're here right now. I've gone through it, so I've just got my opinion and my advice that I can hopefully share with you. The big thing I want to say first is congratulations. You're either there, you're almost there, or you're 1.5 or 2 years away from there. So it's going to be it's one of those big life events that's going to happen for you. Other things I kind of wanted to focus on today is, your home. Where are you going to live after you graduate from college? If you're living in the dorms, or you're living in an apartment, or you're living at home, some of those dynamics might change a little bit. Money, what's your financial situation? How do you kind of start to assess that and move forward a little bit? Your career, where are you going to work once you graduate? Do you have any prospects lined up? How do you go about getting a job right now, especially when things are kind of in the middle? Just quick show of hands, how many are engineering majors in here? How many are architecture majors? Business? And then all the other ones. Okay. Uh-oh. Okay. A couple things? Okay. And those are kind of the three primary areas I want to focus on. If we get to them, and I hope we do, a couple of things I want to cover is social life. Where did all your friends go after graduation? Health and fitness, and why is this important now that you've graduated and moved on from school? Some of my regrets, and hopefully what can be some of your opportunities. And they're not big things. It's just kind of things that I wish I could go back and maybe plan out a little better post-graduation. And then SMART goals. I'm sure a lot of you guys heard about SMART goals. It's just kind of a better way to plan out your goals moving forward. So congratulations, you now have 6 months to live. You just earned a degree from Lawrence Tech, and to me that's a pretty significant achievement. For you guys who know the metrics, we've got a 90+% satisfaction rating. We've got a 90+% career placement rating, and that's pretty cool in my opinion. One thing to realize too is you've got 6 months before your student loans come due. So you've got basically 6 months to kind of map out the next year, year and a half, 2 years. With that time, it's your call. You can either take a break or get right to work. Some people, they want to travel, they want to go out of state, they want to go out of the country and do whatever. Some people, they want to go right from school and get right into the workforce, which is okay too. It's really kind of whatever your perspective is at this point in your life. It's time to start thinking about how you want the next chapter in your life to start going. And also time to start developing a game plan as well. So home, do you know where you're going to live? A lot of you, this is probably all set. You guys have this locked down, ready to go, no problems, no questions, and that's fine. For a lot of people, they've got some digging to do. Can you move home? Will you move home? Will you rent with friends? Will you rent with strangers? Will you move out of state and have to rent something completely on your own? Should you buy a house right now? That's an interesting question that has become a lot more viable in the last few years, especially since the housing market and the way that turned in 2008. So for moving home, for some, it's inevitable, and that's okay. According to 20-something Inc., about 85% of new graduates do end up moving home. So you're not alone. Maybe cash flow is not conducive to getting your own place right now. You don't have that job lined up yet. Or maybe you just don't want to enter any kind of lease or anything that's going to tie you down for more than 6 months. If you're planning on moving out of state, it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good to grab a place that's going to keep you for a year. Either way, moving home with the folks can be painful for some of us, especially for those of us who've been living independently for the past few years. However, there are a few highlights to moving back home. For one, it's a nice safety net while you guys get in your feet. You get to live in your old room, dig into a few home-cooked meals, and you get to take a few minutes without the burden of living expenses to deal with, assuming your parents are able to waive your rent and your utilities. It's also a great way to save a few bucks. That few bucks can be put towards say your loans, a down payment on a car, a down payment on a house moving forward. So as long as your parents are cool with it, it's not necessarily the worst idea. And I'm sure your parents would love to have you back in some degree or another, especially if they haven't seen you for the entire 4 years you've been at school. A few things to remember back home. If you move back home, it's still your parents' roof, so mind your manners. And these are pretty general. If you're an adult and you can set your own curfew, but your mom still worries about you. Don't forget to tell your mom where you are, especially if you're going to be at the bar until 2 o'clock in the morning. It's just common courtesy. Clean up your stuff. You're an adult now. If you've lived on your own, especially, you know this. If you lived with roommates, you know this. Clean up your crap. Do your dishes. Fold your laundry. One nice thing now that you've moved home is being able to help out where you can. Being able to pay a utility bill or a cable bill. Being able to go out and buy the groceries. Being able to cook dinner for your parents who are working 40 hours a week and were able to put you through college. It's kind of a nice thing too. One of the really cool things I noticed when I got out of school too is my relationship with my parents also evolved a little bit too. Instead of them being somebody who is a figure of authority and nurturing, we kind of reached that similar level. I was an adult and they were an adult, so I got to ask them questions that were a little bit more in depth than before I went to school. I wasn't an 18-year-old kid anymore. I was 20-something years old with a little bit of life experience under my belt too. I'm sorry, did you have a question back there? Or? So I thought I saw your hand go up. No. Sorry. And then the last thing, and this is probably one of the most important things, barring cultural norms or other necessities, this is not a permanent solution. Set a date. You don't want to become the hobbit that lives in your parents' basement for the next 35 years and causes them to retire later than they want to. The other option is renting. If you have a job and are already renting with friends, maybe nothing changes. However, if you're leaving the dorms or mom and dad's house for the first time, there are going to be some abrupt changes in how you go about your business. For you dorm dwellers, gone are lump sum housing fees and the included utilities that you guys have grown so accustomed to and have probably taken for granted in some case or another. Now filling 6 kiddie pools and turning up the thermostat to 85 degrees for your winter beach party is going to come with pretty expensive ramifications. For those currently living at home, you get to see what a utility bill in your name actually looks like. And just a word to the wise, it sucks. Some things you can expect on the financial side of renting your own place. The upfront minimum deposit is likely 1 month's rent, maybe more than that, maybe 2 months' rent. Keeping your rent at or below 25% of your income is generally a good rule of thumb from what I understand. Also, it's good to find out if any utilities included. I know a lot of times they'll include water. A lot of times gas and electric are on your own dime. Again, that goes back to turning up the thermostat to 85 degrees in the winter. Gas and electric are monthly bills and are more expensive in the cold months. The water bill comes every few months and it'll likely surprise the hell out of you. You never know how much it's going to be until it shows up on your door and you've got a $500 bill to pay for the last 4 months of water because you had a leaky faucet or something. And renter's insurance is about every 4 months. If you've got about 10 grand worth of stuff, it's not a bad idea. I think most leased properties will actually make you get renter's insurance as well. And if you want cable and internet package, it runs about $100 a month. So I don't know how familiar you guys are with this, but those are just some kind of rules of thumb that I figured would be decent to throw out there to give you an idea. Again, much like living at home, there is roommate etiquette. The biggest thing you have to do is pay your bills, especially if you're living with somebody else. If you're living on your own, it's on your own consequence. But if you're living with somebody else, it's not fair to the other person either. So don't be late. Pay your bills on time. Pay them early. Again, clean up after yourself. Respect your roommate's privacy and be courteous and considerate. And do not touch each other's food unless they say it's okay. It's a big point of contention. I remember hiding and storing my own food in my room just so my roommates wouldn't get drunk and eat all on me. Another option, like I said, that's coming more into light now is buying a house. Now, not a whole lot of people can swing this right out of school just because there simply isn't the cash flow to do that. However, an employer signing bonus, a small inheritance, or a loan from a family member can change that in a hurry. Say you're planning on getting married right out of school. With weddings come wedding gifts, and with that you can build up a nice little bankroll that could potentially be put towards a down payment on the house. Houses are cheap and loan interest rates are low. So now, if you can, it's not necessarily the worst idea. I'm not saying that you should go out and do it if you have the means, but it's at least worth a conversation with some people that you trust. To give you an example, I bought my house, like I said, 2 years after graduation. It was when everything was foreclosed. You could buy a house for peanuts. I pay less than 25% what I would have paid if I would have actually rented an apartment for that time. And it's my place. I get to do whatever I want to it for the most part. It's a condo, so I don't get to do that much to it, but it's still something that I'm building equity in and I own. So that's kind of cool. Like I said, it's sometimes cheaper than renting. A lot of times it's actually cheaper than renting for the most part. FHA mortgages require 3.5% down if you're approved for them. Conventional loans require about 10 to 20% down, and those are a lot harder to get in some cases. But one thing is for sure, a good credit score and money in the bank are two things that are required if you wanted to buy a house. Moving on to money, we all think about it. We know we don't have a whole lot of it right now, especially coming out of undergraduate. Unless you're the guy who's got number one. I had a full ride scholarship and a job waiting for me. you guys are fine. You shouldn't have too many problems moving forward. On the other side of it, you'd have no idea what your financial status is. 3 good things to figure out is what's your credit card situation? What are your final loan tallies? How much do you have in loans that you have been forgetting about for the last 4 years? And then what new bills are coming in that you weren't really savvy to? You know, maybe your parents were covering your cell phone bill for a little while and now that's all on your dime. So it's just a few things you might want to start figuring out as you guys get closer to graduation and then eventually do graduate. You know, for credit cards, you know, do you have a credit card is, I guess, the first question there. If not, you should probably talk to someone a lot smarter than I am about credit cards because now is the time to go out and get one. It's really one of the few ways you can start to build credit. Which becomes important when you want to start getting approved for mortgages and loans and that kind of thing. If you have a credit card, do you have credit card debt? If not, I'm very impressed with you. If so, you're not alone. On average, the graduating senior carries about $4,100 in credit card debt, which is a pretty significant number in most cases. To be honest, that matches almost the dollar amount of when I graduated of all the credit card debt I had. Just because you kind of go through school, you don't really know the cost of things, and it just kind of builds up. You got to pay for books, you got to pay for food, and it's got to get paid for somehow. Student loans, even scarier than credit card debt in some case, but at least you know you have a longer time to pay for it, and it's not going to burn you as bad. It's a burden that you carry for a very long time after you graduate. It's a fact of life thanks to our education system. It's not something that we're going to get away from anytime soon. Hopefully the fact that Lawrence Tech has one of the highest returns on investment rates in the state will hopefully ease that pain a little bit, not completely. Regardless, loans are something to be dealt with. Fortunately, you have about 6 months to start to figure out how you're going to start paying them back. Ideally, you're going to have a job. If that doesn't work, there are plenty of options to give you a break as you start to figure out your finances. Graduated payments, income-based payments, forbearance, deferment. These are just some of the things that when you go to take a look at your loans that your advisor will likely tell you are options. The good news is they can't throw you in jail. There's no such thing as debtor's prison anymore. Sorry, I hope that didn't scare anybody. The other question that's going to come up when you guys graduate is whether or not you should consolidate your loans. Some people are going to say yes, do it right away. Some people are going to say no. It's really case specific, and I can't tell you one way or the other because I don't know each and everyone's financial situation. Loan consolidation is good if you've got multiple loans with multiple payments that you want to consolidate into a single loan with a single payment. However, if you've got low interest rates, it might be a better option to not necessarily consolidate. But like I said, I'm not the guy to tell you what your situation is. There's a lot of online resources and a lot of financial advice out there that'll really help steer you guys. Just one thing to realize, loans are going to be something that you deal with. New bills or incoming bills are the gift that you never wanted. These could include rent for a new place to live, or like I said, simply the transference of payments that your parents were picking up for a while into something that you're now taking control of. You know, assessing your current and new expenditures will help give you a clearer picture of how much you owe and how much you can save and how much is left over. New expenditures for graduates might include rent and utilities, cell phone bills, loan payments, car payments, credit card payments, and gas for commuting as well, which as gas turns into $4 a gallon, $5 a gallon, that's more of a legitimate cost of living. Up front, you see 6 steps to ditch your debt, and this is put together by Jenny Blake. She wrote the book Life After College, Getting What You Want Out of Life. If you guys haven't heard of her, it might be a good idea to check out her blog. I did some of my research using her blog, the research that I had to do. You know, like I said, I've gone through this just recently myself.
Can you repeat that name again? What was her name?
It was Jenny Blake, and her book is called Life After College, The Complete Guide to Getting What You Want. And there's also a few other ones too. I mean, if you do a Google search, a lot of people are talking about this stuff too. But the first thing to do is face the facts. If you've got multiple credit cards with a lot of debt on them, you're going to want to tally that together, and you can't keep a secret from yourself. So figure out what you owe. Then it's going to come down to prioritizing your debt. Which credit cards have the highest interest rates? I know the one that the highest interest rate, that was the first one to go for me. And it makes sense, so you're not recharging those interest payments. Cut back to the essentials for at least 2 weeks. It's not always easy, but sometimes it has to be done. Living skinny. Generate income if you've got a job. That's real easy. If you don't have a job, do whatever you can to scrape together some money. Babysit, tutor, teach a class as an adjunct faculty if you have the opportunity. Do what you can. Sell a kidney. Doesn't matter. Just figure out a way to start paying off your debts. The sooner you do it, the better you feel about it. Don't forget to pay yourself back. One thing you'll start to find out as bills come due and you don't have the necessary scratch together to pay them off right away, you're going to start dipping into your savings account a little bit more than you want to. Don't forget to pay that back, otherwise you start down this slippery slope of taking out of your savings and taking out of your savings and taking out of your savings until you have no more savings anymore and you can't buy anything that you really want, like a house or a car. So don't forget to do that. And then just general reflection on some of the stupid decisions or decisions that had to be made along the way. How can you avoid getting into $4,100 of credit card debt like me? And just try to avoid those mistakes in the future. The other thing is creating a budget plan. And this is just kind of a simplistic 4-step budget plan. It's pretty easy to outline. Most of you guys are probably working on something like this already. And this is probably just me repeating stuff you already know. But identifying your monthly income, what are you getting for a paycheck, your other income, identify outgoing essentials, identifying your outgoing non-essentials, and then figuring out what your allowance is, which is basically adding together 2 and 3, subtracting it from 1. The thing to remember is, if the number's negative, then you're losing out on some of your non-essentials. So you can't go shopping anymore. You can't go to the movies. You can't have fun. So save some money if you can. The next point has to do with careers. What's it like out there? And I gotta believe that probably a lot of you are interested in this segment more than some of the other ones. The good news is it's not 2008 anymore. Anybody who graduated between 2008 and 2010 will give you a pretty personal insight on what that was like for a lot of people. It was a nightmare. In other news, a lot of people are still getting over this nightmare. And just to give you some perspective, I'll share basically how the start of my career panned out starting in 2008. I started at the architectural firm in January of 2008, which is right before the economy went to hell. For the first 8 months before things hit the fan, things went pretty much like I expected they would. I was still used to everything being happy. I'd never been through a recession before. I worked my ass off. I got a raise. I got a bonus. Things were great, and I liked my job. I was busy every day. There was always something to do. But then things started to slow down a little bit. Work became a lot more scarce. As projects were wrapping up, people were sent to work on specs and other menial stuff that nobody really wanted to do, but it was just kind of stuff that was kicking around the office. We started to hear about other firms starting to lay people off, en masse too, which scared the hell out of all of us. Then came the company meeting where they told us we were going to go down to 32-hour work weeks, which is basically, you had a mandatory furlough day where you were working 4 days a week. You took Fridays off during the summer, which at first glance doesn't sound too bad. It actually wasn't too bad. Getting a 3-day weekend every weekend of the summer wasn't too bad. The thing that sucked was the 20% pay cut that came with it too. And as someone who's starting out as an intern, it's not really making a whole lot of money to begin with a shiny brand new mortgage, it was something that was kind of scary for me and a lot of other people too. After summer, they kind of reevaluated the situation, took a look at where the company was financially, and that's when they decided that they were going to have to go into layoff mode, which nobody wanted to hear, but it was a necessary evil for the firm. In 2 years, we laid off over 75 people out of a 250-person firm. And that was a pretty humbling experience. I don't think there's a whole lot that's more humbling than seeing coworkers pack up their boxes right next to you, and while you're expected to work a full day and act like nothing's happening. And the way I view this is equivalent or comparably better to how some of our competitors fared. Some people had just had to fold tent, and that was the way it was. A few months ago, I received my first raise in 3 years, which I was super excited about. But we haven't really thought about bonuses or stuff like that. Today, our office is busy, and we got a really heavy workload, which is good. Our engineers are completely slammed. They've had to bring back layoffs. They've actually started hiring new people too, which is great. Architecturally, we've brought back a lot of people who were laid off, which is a good thing. We haven't started hiring full-time new people yet, but we are starting to bring in co-ops for the summer too. So there is new young professionals that are starting to get experience, which is a good thing to hear. Last Friday, I was at the Architectural Career Fair for LTU, and it seemed like that was the general consensus too. Everybody's really busy. Everybody is optimistic. Everybody's still a little timid to bring on young professionals, but things are going in the right direction. And if you're an engineer, you're fine, from what I understand. It sounds like there are plenty of jobs to be had out there. I can't think of one of my engineering friends in my network that is still struggling to find a job right now. That might not be the case for everybody. From what I understand, the engineering jobs are out there to be had. The reason I'm telling you all this is that business as usual is not business as usual anymore, at least how I thought it was supposed to be growing up or going through college. New jobs are on the rise, but it's not nearly as easy as it was in 2008. Firms are calling back laid-off workers first, and baby boomers are sticking around a little bit longer because of deep cuts to their 401k. They can't retire yet. And this makes it harder for new graduates. They will retire, though, so don't worry. This difficulty is compounded if you don't have a lot of experience. Just fact of life. If you're going through school, you don't necessarily have a whole lot of relevant work experience. For this reason, you got to be sharp when entering the workforce. So given this scenario, how do you actually go about getting a job, which is, I'm sure, what you guys are interested in. Just some candid reflections on, some of my candid reflections on the last few years. Your degree is not enough. If that's all you're doing here, you should probably be doing a little bit more. Experience is king, and it always will be. Nobody owes you anything, so don't feel like just because you have that degree you're entitled to a job. You don't know as much as you think, so going into a firm, don't be overly arrogant. Employer loyalty lives within profit margins, and that was one that was really hard for me to accept. I thought you get a job, you're with a family, I like these guys, I'm going to be here forever. But profit margins are a reality of business too. And the biggest thing is be adaptable. Just because you go to school for one thing doesn't mean you're necessarily going to follow that career path until the day you retire. I might not be an architect in 5-10 years. I might be doing something else completely different. I might be in sales. I might be playing a lot of golf and not doing anything else. I don't know. Ideally, if I win the lottery. But yeah, be adaptable. Next question is, where do you find a job? First point of that is just network, network, network. And then network some more if you can. It's an old cliche, but it still stands the test of time. It's not about who you know, or it's not about what you know, it's who you know. A lot of people I know got their jobs just by having a contact with somebody else. So make sure that as you guys meet people in university and talk to your professors and get into the business world, you're always keeping those connections strong. And with some of the tools we have right now, it's really easy to stay in touch. LinkedIn, Facebook, just use it all. Putting yourself out there can be difficult, but it's necessary. Maybe you're not someone that likes to do a whole lot of talking, or maybe you're just uncomfortable in that kind of situation. Get comfortable and get some practice with it. You're basically trying to get a date with your employer. Most of us have gone on dates before. We know that, talking to girls or talking to guys can be kind of intimidating. Well, it's kind of the same thing with an employer. You don't always know what you're going to get, but you just know you want to meet them and talk to them and get an inside track. Tap into university organizations, professors, etc. For me, like Jennifer said, I was a SIGEP for 3.5, 4 years. Got a lot of contacts through that, through working on solar decathlon, and then just people I've met in school too. It's not just the organizations I was part of, but also the organizations that were offshoots of that too, or the people I met as a tangent to those organizations. And then use social networking to your advantage. You've got Facebook, you've got things like LinkedIn. Don't forget to use those and really try and sell yourself on them if you can. Scour your local resources. From what I understand, we've got a pretty decent career services program here. Don't be afraid to tap into them. They've got a lot of good advice, and some of it, it may sound pretty standard, but they know what they're talking about. Career fairs. There's not always a lot that comes from career fairs, but just go to them anyways. At the very least, you're getting practice talking to people, which is not always easy to get practice at. And you start to figure out what's out there and what the market's like and what people are looking for too. LinkedIn and other online resources I just mentioned as well. Go to company websites. Figure out where you want to work. And then just go and see what they have available. And another option is headhunters too. I don't know if it has a negative connotation or not, but sometimes they get results too. If you get a job out of it, it's not necessarily a bad idea.
What's a headhunter?
Headhunter is basically someone where you submit their resume and they go shop it around. The thing is they get a percentage of your incoming salary. So say you're getting paid like $50,000, they get a percentage right off the top of that. They get paid up front. But they can be effective if the market's doing okay. So it's not bad necessarily to get your name into one of their lists. The problem is sometimes you just submit a resume and then it just gets caught in the spin cycle for a while.
Brian, I just wanted to point out that they get paid by the company that hires you, not
Yeah.
by you.
That's another big thing too, knowing they got to shell out a little bit more. What? What? Cool, thank you. Okay, another way to find potential jobs is to just volunteer. I mean, say the market's pretty slim, you're not getting any bites, just get involved in something. It can be anything you want. For architects, get involved with the AIA Emerging Professionals. Get involved with your fraternity alumni board. Habitat for Humanity. Anything that really kind of strikes your passion. Because there's a lot of offshoots to that as well. It might be kind of menial at first, but eventually you're going to gain some responsibility if you're committed to it and if you stick around for a little while too. One, it's a great way to expand your network and your references as well, which may be important down the road. It's also a good source of relevant experience to highlight on a resume. If you're coming out of college and don't really necessarily have a whole lot of relevant experience, that's one way to get it where you're not actually, if you can't find employment. And then employers tend to favor people that are community focused. And the last thing here with where do I find a job is to match your job search skills. Match your job search to your skills. Take a minute and then write down your job skills. Not necessarily the job you want, but just the skills that you have and what your ideal job requirements are. For example, if you're good at public speaking, if you're good at software, if you're good at whatever you're good at, and then your requirements. How much money do you want to make? Where do you want to live? All that stuff. It's much better than trying to shoehorn yourself into a job that you're not interested in or you're not qualified for. If you want to get a job just because it's the title that you think you want and it's not necessarily matched to your skills, you're going to wake up in the morning and hate yourself every day that you have to go to work. just because it's not something that you want to do. This can lead you down some alternate career paths. And I think for most of us, we're set up pretty well to be adaptable, just coming from an LTU degree. For example, I've got friends who started down the architectural career path, and now they're in software sales. They're construction managers out in the job site. It can be, pretty much whatever you want as long as the skill sets line up. And again, in the end, it might prove more rewarding if you find something that you're really, really in love with versus just a job. Next question is, how do I get a job? One thing to note is that there's 1 million people out there with the same degree as you, and that might be, that's not an exact number. To note, too, is that many of them have more experience than you do as well. So one thing to do is inventory your skills and experience from university as a way to kind of start building up that resume a little bit. What have you done in school that kind of sets you apart from everybody else? What experience makes you different? Do you have any employment experience? Do you have any extracurricular activities that you could put anything? Were you president of anything? Were you a member of anything? Do you have any sort of professional affiliations at this point? Also volunteer work. What did you do while you're in school on a volunteering level that might be attractive to a prospective employer? And then what skill sets make you valuable? Are you a good public speaker? Are you software savvy? Things of value that are really gonna put you up the ladder in terms of an employer's mindset. Build a resume, cover letter, and portfolio that your technical communications professor will be proud of. You guys all took Tech and Prof, right? Way back when, beginning of your academic career. I remember that class. I hated that class. But one thing I found out is that they had a lot of good advice that still holds true. One thing to note is that perfecting these documents are within your control. There's a lot of variables out there when you go to start looking for jobs, but this is one thing that's personal to you that you can really, really work on and hone in. One thing that's important is to highlight the things that set you apart, not just what you've done, because that's really what's going to get you the job and make you memorable. Make it personal to the job that you're submitting. Nobody wants to see a generic resume or anything like that. Know the job, know the company, anything that's relevant for when you're submitting this thing. One thing I've always been told is limit it to 1 page. If you're under 30, limit it to 1 page, unless you've got the requisite experience to back it up. Me personally, coming out of school, I did a lot of cool stuff. I still didn't have enough to warrant more than a page worth of resume. And use it well. You've only got 1 page, so make sure the real estate counts. Have everybody review it. That's a big thing too. Your friends, industry professionals, anybody in your network, your mom, anybody who would have some insight into what you can do to make it better, even if it's just picking up things like grammatical errors and sentences that sound funny. But make sure you get it in front of people and have them review it. And then the last thing with the resume and the cover letter is don't keep it a secret. If you're going to invest the hours to build this thing up and fine-tune it and make it absolutely flawless, the most beautiful resume anyone's ever seen, the worst thing you can do is hide the damn thing. You might as well put it out there for people to look at. Submit it to employers, post it on your LinkedIn, give it to a headhunter, give it to everybody in the hopes that maybe you'll start to get some bites. The more you put yourself out there, the more opportunities there are. Send it to all your friends and have them send it to people in their network too, as a way to get a job. Research the company is a huge thing. Nothing says I'm excited to work for your company like a generic letter, generic resume and a cover letter that says absolutely nothing about the company that you're going to work for. If anything, at least say the name of the company and some of the job requirements that they're looking for. From my understanding, some HR professionals will actually weed out resumes that don't include this stuff as a way to kind of cull the list down a little bit. If they're getting 100 resumes, every 2 weeks or something like that, it's just a convenient way for them to do it. It might not be fair. You might be the most qualified person to do it, but don't make the stupid mistakes of not including at least their name. Know enough about their history just to be dangerous. When you go in for a conversation, the fact that they know that you've actually done some homework on them is going to make them feel good about it. Understand their core values. And if you really wanted to get into a good discussion, know something about a recent project that they've completed that really interests you. If anything, it's a good icebreaker for when you go into that interview. Develop your elevator pitch. You guys familiar with an elevator pitch? Most of you guys know what it is. Basically, you want to tell them about yourself in 2 minutes or less. Most of the time, it's just used to break the ice and for them to get a brief understanding of who you are. Why are you there? Give a brief background, identify your accomplishments, and explain the specifics of why you want the job or why you think you'd be a good fit for the job. This is also good to have on standby for networking, those impromptu conversations where you do actually want to break the ice and get a conversation going too. It's really nice to have in your back pocket. Cold calling. Anybody made a cold call before? Those are really exciting. But it may be intimidating, but it shows enthusiasm and determination. It's a lot more proactive than just hitting submit on an HR to an HR email and calling it good. One thing to do is identify the HR person and ask them if they're hiring. Pointed. Don't dance around the issue. You're wasting their time. Even if they say no, it's a good thing to find out what qualifications they're looking for in new hires. And take notes too. Don't be afraid to write it down. That way, moving forward, you can kind of help dial in your resume to what they're looking for. Ask them if you can send them a resume, even if they say no, just so they have it on file. Most companies keep them on file for a year. Never hurts to have it in the system in case they start flipping through them one day and decide they want to pay somebody a certain amount of money to do a certain thing. And after the fact, reflect on the call. Where did you really screw that call up, or where did you really shine? Did it go really well? Was it kind of awkward? What can you do the next time around to really make that call better? With the way things are, a lot of people are getting creative too in how they approach getting a job. One way to get a foot in the door is just going to a firm and trying to interview somebody, as a way to get your name out there. Again, it's proactive. People get to see your face. They get to know your name. You may feel like a pest, but if they hear your name enough, they're going to eventually associate it with the fact that you want a job sometime in the future. Ask if you can organize an office tour. I see a lot of students come through our office every once in a while with some of the office tours that the AIAS puts together. I saw you guys there a few weeks ago. But ask if they wouldn't mind speaking to recent graduates about their profession. Call one of them up and get them over into M218 and see if they give you, a brief overview of what a day in the life is like, and what the current job market's like, or at least what they're building, so you have an idea what the job market's like. Another thing is create a personal marketing plan. How are you going to go about selling yourself to these people? So just having some sort of plan on how you're going to do that is not a bad idea. And then one thing I'm starting to see now is people building a career-driven website for themselves. It's really easy to scan a logo with your iPhone or something and just have somebody's entire life pop up that's career-driven. I was reading a story about one guy who wanted to work for Twitter. And he titled the website, "Why Twitter Should Hire Me," and then he just fed it to the wolves on Twitter. And within, I think, 24 hours, he ended up getting a call back from Twitter. I don't know where the conversation went, but at least he was proactive and creative about it. Modify your attitude when looking for a job. There's a difference between I'm looking for a job and I'm here to do the work that you need done. One is I want. The other one is this is what I can do for you. And there is a certain mentality there. Demonstrate that you want to help them and show them that you have the ability to do it. Just modifying that mentality can really help you step up your game a little bit. Because looking for a job is boring. Figuring out how you can help somebody is a lot more interesting. And then follow up. don't forget to do it. It is super, super critical. One, it gives you an opportunity to check in. The other thing is it provides name recognition for them as well. If they go a week and then they receive a handwritten thank you card from you, it puts your name back in their head. And that might just happen to be the time that they're starting to flip through resumes again. And it adds a personal touch to it too. And it thanks them for their time, which in most cases you were probably interrupting. And then don't botch the interview if you can help it. One way to do that is just practice, 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 if you have the opportunity. I'm not sure if they handle that kind of thing in career services, just interview practice. But I mean, get a buddy, get a few buddies, just pretend. Ask your dad to interview you if you want to, or your mom or whatever, your uncle. Get someone that you know that's in the industry to just grill you and see how it goes. At the very least, you'll start to figure out where you're not as strong and then where your strengths really are. And then just some of the mandatory stuff. Dress to impress. It's always better to overdress than to underdress. Have that elevator pitch ready as your icebreaker. Be ready to talk about a behavioral situation you've dealt with. And when I say behavioral situation, it's more, if an issue comes up, how have you handled it? And you can give a specific example too. So that's when you can start to fall back on your college experiences or your employment experiences. Say you had a conflict with an individual, just a difference of opinion. How'd you go about starting to figure that out and starting to resolve that? And just showing that you have the ability to communicate with people and start to problem solve. That's a big hit with employers. Bring extra copies of everything. Extra resumes, extra list of references, extra cover letters, extra portfolios if you can, just in case they ask for it. They're not always going to keep the one that you sent them in the first place. Another important thing, bring a notepad and write down questions ahead of time. And then take a lot of notes too. If you can ask questions at the end, you've got about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the interview where they're going to ask you, so do you have any questions? And that's the time where you start feeding them, with just questions about the firm. And it can be anything, where do you see the company going in 5 years? What are opportunities for professionals to grow here? Just anything that you really want to know about the company. Again, that's one of those things that really demonstrates that you want to know what's up, especially with this individual company. And then take notes, again, just so you can remember what's going on down the road, too. And then if you can, I know it's tough when you're in an interview setting. Hopefully you can relax if it's possible. It just kind of makes things flow a little bit. Hopefully your elevator pitch, you guys can latch onto something and just kind of, hopefully that conversation will go from there. Because a resume, you can't really outline a lot of the information from a detailed project like that. So a portfolio is not a bad thing to have. And if not a lot of people are bringing portfolios to the table from engineering backgrounds or science backgrounds, that just gives you one more tool in your arsenal. So, yep. I guess we can, if there's any more questions on careers, we can kind of wait till the end, I guess. But just to move on, social life, where did all my friends go? And this doesn't mean that all your friends are leaving once you graduate, so don't worry. LTU is pretty localized. Most students are from Michigan, and there are a significant number that are from the Metro Detroit area. Because of this, a lot of graduates tend to stick around the area following graduation. Still, it's pretty likely that the social dynamics are going to change once you actually graduate. Some people move home. Some people chase jobs out of state. Some people get married, buy a house, and have kids right away. And then some people you just lose touch with. It's just a fact of life. You try to help it, but sometimes it happens. I mentioned I got married last summer. There was 5 guys that were standing up on my wedding party. Of those 5 guys, only 2 are living in the state of Michigan. And then those 2 are both living more than an hour away. So it's tough to keep in contact, especially when you're working a 40-hour work week and your weekends become very sacred to you. You guys will figure out what that means coming up shortly. Weekends are king, and you try not to bug people on the weekends if you can help it. Luckily, I still have a pretty strong network in the Metro Detroit area. and hopefully you guys will too. My best man, he has a different perspective. He actually moved out to Chicago, so he's kind of in that I don't have a huge network out here, so I'm in the process of trying to make new friends. And making new friends is tough when you're not in college or not in a dedicated environment like that, because if you think dating is hard, if you're a guy trying to meet a girl or a girl trying to meet a guy, try to meet someone of the same sex and have a casual conversation with them. It's really kind of intimidating, to be pretty frank about it. Luckily, I had a lot of experience in SIGEP with recruitment and stuff like that. But whatever you can do to kind of meet people. And there are plenty of opportunities out there to do that. You just got to kind of take advantage of it. For example, my buddy who lives in Chicago, he used to play on the hockey team here. So he started playing on some of the rec leagues out there. So that's how he started meeting people. On top of that, we still plan stuff together, and I still plan stuff with a lot of my friends that's, scheduled and mapped out. So, it's written in stone, and we don't lose touch with each other. But where did all my friends go? Living locally or out of state is a big question. Be ready to adapt your social network, because you will have to a little bit. Again, it's easier to date than it is to make new friends in some cases. And then again, do what you can to try and muster up a social network. Say you move out to Chicago like my buddy did. Say you've got friends, you don't necessarily have friends out there, but you know people who know people out in Chicago. Give them a call and see if you can get their number. It's not necessarily a bad way to start meeting new people. Join a sports team, join an organization, start volunteering out there. And it's just one way you can start to meet new people and get involved and actually start to have a social life in a place that you're completely foreign to. Facebook is not a social life. You can use it to kind of dial in on who's where, but step away from your computer. You have to in order to be a real person. Having 475,000 friends doesn't make you a socialite. And then again, schedule and plan things with your friends as often as you can. For example, this winter I went on a snowboarding trip with my buddies to Vermont. I think starting every winter now, that's where we're going to go. Every summer I go up to my buddies in the UP, and that's always a good time. It's something that we know is coming up. We can look on the calendar and say, oh, it's this weekend. I know I'm getting together with these guys. It may sound very scheduled, very orchestrated, and not why would I do that? But it really helps in terms of keeping in touch with people. Health and fitness. Why is my ass so big? Okay, being fit and healthy, if you're out in the job market, it really has a positive impact on your confidence, your self-image, and your attitude. If you feel good, you're going to do well for the most part. Also, people like healthy, attractive people, so it's not something to take lightly either. And if you're between school and a job, you really don't have an excuse to start getting in shape a little bit. If you're just sitting on the couch, you're really kind of prime candidate for getting out to the gym. One thing that I've found out is office jobs can be very sedentary. I think I've gained probably a good 20 pounds since I started working. And it's really easy to lose control. I mean, you go to work, you sit in a chair for 8 hours a day if you work in an office job. You go home, you're tired, you sit on the couch for a little while, you eat dinner. And if you don't have any kind of routine, it's really easy to start spinning out of control. Especially when you actually start getting a job but don't want to make food for yourself. You just go out and then again, exercise can be a great way to keep in touch with friends. For instance, there's one guy in particular that I play racquetball with every so often. It's kind of like our thing. It's what we do. We go on canoe trip every once in a while. I wouldn't really call that exercise, though. That's it's very counterproductive. But just using exercise as a creative way to keep in contact with friends is not necessarily a bad idea. And then regrets and opportunities. How can you have a little bit of fun after college? Don't forget to celebrate is one thing. Graduating is a big milestone in your life, whether you want to believe it or not. You guys all remember, for the most part, that graduation party you had after high school. Go out with a bang. Don't forget to live it up a little bit before you actually start being you know, a real live adult. And then again, take a month off if you can afford it. One thing I did that I kind of regret is I think I took about a week between finishing school and then getting into work. And if I could go back, I don't know if I'd do it so quick right away. I know right now you don't necessarily have the option to do it, just with the way things are. But if you can swing it, try it out. It'll give you a little bit of time to kind of catch your breath a little bit. I went on my honeymoon just before Thanksgiving, and that was the first 2-week vacation I've taken in 4 years, which is not cool. Travel if you can, even if it's only a few hours away, even if you're going to see your grandparents. Try and get out a little bit, reconnect with some people, or go to a new place that you haven't been before. That's going to take you maybe more than a weekend. Make a list of 50 things that you really want to do right here and now. It'll give you a target to shoot for now that you're out of school. I mean, you've been so goal-oriented for the last 4 years that sometimes it's kind of hard to recharge the battery a little bit and get focused on something that you want to do. This will give you something to look forward to. And again, the same thing goes with planning a tradition or an annual trip with buddies as well. It's something that you can really look forward to moving forward. Another good thing to do would be make a list of fail-safe weekend and after-work activities. I can't tell you how many times I've gone home and stared my wife in the face and said, "What do you want to do tonight?" She looks back at me and says, "I don't know, what the hell do you want to do tonight?" And then we have that conversation for the next half hour, and then we finally sit on the couch and watch TV for a while. So it's just, it's not bad to have a list. Again, it sounds, very programmed, very orchestrated, but it'd be great to just kind of look on the list and say, "Oh yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. We should go do that." And then the last thing I'll touch on, which I won't spend a whole lot of time on, is just setting SMART goals. Make sure they're specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And then there are a couple examples there. I want to move out of my parents' basement by September 2012. That's a good measurable goal with a timeline to it. I want to complete my architectural registration exams by June 2013. I want to lose 15 pounds in a certain period of time. So I guess that's it. Good luck, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Anybody have any questions? Bueller?